Welcome back to IGN's History of Awesome, a year-by-year breakdown of all the big events that shape pop culture. 2012 was a great year with a variety of games like Journey, Borderlands 2, and The Walking Dead all seeing release, and on the movie side of things, Marvel gave us their crown jewel with the Avengers. Meanwhile, the CW revamped its image and released the violent and dramatic show Arrow. Panelists, assemble! And let the discussion begin.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the History of Awesome. I will be your host this time out. I'm Damon Hatfield, joined by Marty Sleva.
Hello.
Brendan Graber.
Hi.
Eric Goldman.
Greetings.
We've got a great show for you today. 2012
What?
is the year at hand.
Yeah, are we just
the
going to talk
world
about the
ended?
film 2012?
Yeah, I think the world ended. Yeah, that's the only thing we're talking about.
Yeah.
Was that a Roland Emmerich disaster
Yeah.
movie?
Yeah.
With John Cusack.
Oh,
Yeah.
so terrible.
Built an ark.
Yeah. No, we're not talking about the movie.
Is that the Outrunning Ice one?
Yeah.
Outrunning everything one.
What year did that one come out? I don't even
2012. Was it?
No, I think it was a little earlier.
Really?
Yeah.
I think it was. Anyway, no, there are a bunch of big movies, TV shows, and video games to talk about in 2012. Let's start with IGN's Game of the Year in 2012, Journey.
Yeah, that's Marty.
Humble little game
That's
called
Marty's Game of the Generation.
Game of the Generation.
Yeah, Game of the Forever. It's the best. It's the best video game since Grim Fandango.
Wow.
Marty Sleva. Yeah, that was man. I think that might be one of the earliest in the year Game of the Years we've given. That game came out in February or March.
Oh,
It's like a Silence of the Lambs of games.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That usually happens with games and with movies.
Yeah.
Like people sort of forget really high quality stuff that came out earlier on in the year. But Journey was it was one of those games that like took indie and like removed any stigma from it because it just became like, oh wait, this is a phenomenal piece of art that everyone wants to play. And what that game company did in 90 minutes, like what they were able to make people feel and sort of introduce really interesting multiplayer elements and just an absolutely phenomenal score and presentation was astounding. It's one of those games, I went back and replayed it when it came to PS4 a couple months ago, and it's a thing. I'm probably going to go back and play this game every year just to experience it again, and yeah, it's just really special.
probably the first non-AAA game to win
Yeah.
IGN's
Yeah,
Game of the
that I
Year
can
award.
think of. Like,
Yeah, honestly.
it kind of proved that I've signed the record that you don't need a AAA budget or AAA like huge amounts of studios worldwide to make a really good product.
Yeah, absolutely. And it was, that game company, this is their third game. They had the 3-game deal with Sony, and they did Flow, which was a very weird experimentation thing that was sort of about sperm. I think it was about sperm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Let's go with that.
And then they did Flower, which was this really great, like they actually had like interesting mechanics, and it was beautiful. But then they took Journey, and Journey was this, I mean, from start to finish,
Yeah.
it tells the story without words, which is absolutely beautiful.
Yeah, Eric, it's fairly common for a smaller art house film to win Best Picture at the
Right,
Oscars,
right.
but it was
And
pretty unheard of.
often be one that a lot of the mainstream are like, wait, what's that?
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. It was pretty unheard of for a video game, a smaller video game that wasn't a big AAA blockbuster action game
Yeah.
to win Game of the Year.
No, totally. And it's just one of those, like, you, right from the get-go, and when the score kicks in, and you're this little, like, nameless traveler who sits up in the desert, and the way that game is able to guide you and sort of push you in the right direction without ever holding your hand or telling you what to do or explaining the mechanics or explaining what this world is or the backstory. You don't need it.
You don't need a crazy gamer chat in your face. Like, dude,
Yeah.
bro, get
Yeah.
up there. Get up there, bro.
Yeah, and it's
Suck.
great. And the people you meet along the way, and you have this like silent camaraderie with them, and with, I guess, I don't know, without spoiling it, like the ending is incredibly powerful and provides even context at the beginning of the game as well. Yeah, I think it's many people in the office agree it's probably one of the best games of the last decade.
A very, very significant game. 2012 also gave us the beginning of Telltale's The Walking Dead series. I think all of season 1
Was in
released in 2012.
Yeah, and that was the that was one of the many tendrils of the Walking Dead empire, along with Kirkman's comic and the TV show. Tendrils. Zombies have tentacles. I don't know if you knew that.
Tentacle zombie.
Yeah, that's a real thing.
Yeah.
Octopi zombie.
Yeah, Octopi Zombie. But no, it's the game that sort of paved the way for modern Telltale. Telltale
Yeah.
had been stumbling with the Jurassic Park series, especially.
I didn't realize they started in 2004.
Yeah.
Former LucasArts folks getting back together to make more traditional adventure games. Basically.
Yeah.
And they put out a lot of stuff over the years. Some of it hit, some of it didn't. Some of them had been legitimate hits, like Back to the Future, even
Yeah.
though it wasn't particularly well received with critics. It
Yeah.
sold well.
And they were able to get Christopher Lloyd. And
Yeah.
Martin-
I enjoyed Monkey Island.
Monkey Island was good.
Not as good as the
actually
classics, but it was still
I
good.
thought Strong Bad's Cool Game for Attractive People was awesome.
Totally,
but
yeah.
not a big hit.
Yeah.
None of them hit like Walking Dead hit.
Yeah, and it was, it's the game that like reinvigorated the adventure genre. And we see a lot of stuff now with like Broken Age and a lot of Kickstarter adventure games. But this is the game that, right from the get-go in the first episode, smartly didn't try to adapt the comic book or the TV series. Like there's certain characters who enter and exit and you're like, oh, that's Glenn. And you see Glenn for 30 minutes in the game. But by creating new characters in Lee and Clementine especially, and the bond that they form throughout the 5 episodes culminates in probably one of the most emotional moments in video game history.
A lot of people I see name this game still as their sort of favorite facet of The Walking Dead.
Yeah.
I mean, even when they were announcing Fear the Walking Dead, so many people said, oh, well, it should either be that game or something like that game.
Yeah.
It made such an imprint, which is really impressive when you consider how huge Walking Dead has become and how many there's books and comics and multiple TV series.
Yeah, I can't really think of another property that has hit on such a successful level on all multiple platforms as The Walking Dead. The fact that the TV shows, the comic, and the game are so critically and commercially successful is amazing.
There have been bad games.
There have been some real awful Walking
AMC's
Dead
Walking
games.
Dead the game.
Yeah,
For numberitis.
Yeah, so not only did Telltale create a genuinely emotional and affecting story, but they did it with branching paths.
yeah. Which
So
is
It kind of paved the way for the Game of Thrones ones now, where choices actually did matter. I think a lot of games try and do that, but Telltale really hit the nail on the head of people will remember that, and then way down the line they'll go hey, remember we did that one thing? Well, guess what?
there's consequences.
Consequence.
Yeah, and I mean, since The Walking Dead was originally announced as Telltale was going to make 3 different games. They were going to make a Fables game, which they did with Wolf Among
was
Us,
very, very good.
and was awesome. This, and then they were supposed to make a King's Quest game as well, which they eventually dropped the rights to. But
Someone
Sierra's
else
doing it
picked
now.
that up,
Yeah, but I mean, since The Walking Dead season 1, it's sort of set the framework for Telltale as a studio, and their level of quality has remained consistent since then with. Tales from the Borderlands and Wolf Among Us, and then Walking Dead Season 2 and Game of Thrones, and now with Minecraft. But when you look back, I mean, I think the sort of the arc that Lee and Clementine had in the first series is, oh my God, yeah, the balding baby. That and Journey. That was just a year of me crying.
It seems like it gave a lot of people just confidence because so many bad adaptations happen in games based on other properties. But now it's when Telltale's doing something, everyone's like, oh, cool, they're in good hands.
Totally. And it proved episodic can work. Things had tried to do episodic before that, but just sort of floundered and couldn't stay on schedule. I mean, we still don't have a 3rd episode of Half-Life 2. Let's not hold our breath for that one. But it proved that you can release these, $5 episodes that take the time. You play through them in the span of a movie once every month or 2, and it can be commercially and critically successful.
Now, in the front of the more traditional big AAA blockbuster games, 2012 gave us an excellent effort in Borderlands 2.
Oh my God. Yeah.
I think Borderlands 2 was so good.
Yes, and that is a prime example. I think a lot of games last generation, the first game set a groundwork, so stuff like the first Uncharted, the first Mass Effect, the first Assassin's Creed, even the first Batman.
Those are all really good examples.
Yeah, and then the second one is took a hot beat, made a hot song. I came up with that myself.
Nice.
Yeah, I did not. But Borderlands 2, I mean, by very...
Sleva.
I think we're onto something. I just ripped my mic off and I have a rap career now.
That was so weird how that happened.
By changing the art style and making it you even saw that cover of the Psycho, blowing his brains out and the game sort of splattering, the art splattering out. That cel-shaded look is so iconic now. That is what, when you think of Pandora, when you think of Borderlands, you immediately think of that look. Those incredible characters, introducing Handsome Jack, who's one of the most charismatic, awful bad guys ever. Just amazing co-op, great loot, hilarious.
Up there with Portal 2, with one of the funniest games I've ever played.
Yeah,
absolutely.
The humor was really spot on.
Yeah, what Anthony Birch did and that world, it's humor, so much of it is hilarious, but there's also these super emotional story threads that you're oh, I didn't expect to feel something in a cel-shaded comedy game about killing weirdos on a moon planet using neato guns. It also it like Diablo, it has that perfect, and now with stuff like Destiny, that sort of perfect IV drip of loot, which keep people coming back.
It's a gameplay loop that I love.
Yeah.
Just, go out, get your loot, come back.
And you're like, oh, it's a little bit better. No, that thing's a different color.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And the co-op. The co-op's great. I mean, very few shooters have such incredible 4-player drop-in, drop-out co-op campaigns.
Plus, that's a game that, what it is now compared to when it first released, it's like over twice as big now
absolutely.
as when
All
it was
the
first
DLC
released.
that
There's
went with
so
that.
much
Yeah,
content.
insane. Like 2
Really
years
story,
worth of DLC and stuff like they were sort of hit or miss, but there was like the Tiny Tina DLC, which was super creative, and she was like a dungeon master who would be the narrator, and stuff would change in the game based on her narration. She'd be like, and then 1,000 bad guys show up, and like you just get slaughtered.
Yeah.
And you're like, you can't do that. She's like, all right. She pulls them away. Just really clever, smart stuff, and obviously led to there's a Borderlands movie in development, led to Tales from the Borderlands pre-sequel. And then, Gearbox is working on Borderlands 3, which will no doubt be huge.
Well, yeah, I mean, they haven't really officially announced it. They said that they're
like, we are going to possibly start
going
this.
to make it sometime in the future.
So we're going to hire people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, sometimes it's a little frustrating that we don't know anything about a new Borderlands. But then I think 2012, it's only been 3 years.
Yeah.
It was 7 years since Fallout 3.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I guess it really hasn't been that long.
Yeah. And I could see, I know you kind of scoff because video game movies are, by and large, not good. But I mean, from what we've seen of Warcraft and the pedigree behind Assassin's Creed, like I think could be a turning point.
I think they're trying. They're getting bigger and more interesting people involved in making them.
Yeah, totally. And I mean, when you're casting, when you have Duncan Jones helming one and Michael Fassbender in another one, like I could totally see a Borderlands movie being read, or awful,
or
awesome. We did have Dwayne The Rock Johnson in Doom.
No, I don't like Doom, but I like The Rock.
I like The Rock as well.
Who is Prince of Persia?
Jake Gyllenhaal.
Jake Gyllenhaal.
Yeah. Let's not talk about that one.
Wasn't he also in 2012?
No, that was
Day After
Full
Tomorrow.
circle.
Yeah.
They're all the same.
Now, Marty, you mentioned Diablo. Diablo 3 came out in 2012. And now, come on, be nice.
No, I was actually really excited. I mean, it wasn't the best, but I still really like Diablo as a series. I love Diablo 3.
I do too. So this is called History of Awesome. I think Diablo 3 is an awesome game today.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe it wasn't right at launch, but I think it's still worth celebrating it for what it,
Totally.
what it was able to become.
Yeah, I mean, in the 2014 episode, we are going to talk about Destiny, which was a game that was good in 2014, but became amazing in 2015.
Yeah.
Diablo's the same thing with, Reaper of Souls, like that. The launch was a little bit rocky, but the game it's become today and the game that you can play on consoles now is incredible.
Yeah, I think what you can say is that it didn't have the best launch, but it showed that Blizzard actually paid attention. Like, they had a lot of ideas from their past games. It's been 10 years since Diablo 2, and they're like, auction house is a really big thing in World of Warcraft. Let's try it here. They tried it, didn't work out too well. They pulled it back, and then they're like, hey, people are having problems with loot. Let's have a giant patch and restructure how everything works in terms of like dungeon raiding and looting. And I think that's really showing that they really care about this franchise, and I think it made it a really awesome game.
Yeah.
That game was 10 years in development. It set a new record for fastest selling PC game, sold over 3.5 million copies in the first 24 hours. It was the best-selling PC game of 2012, sold over 12 million copies that year. It has since sold over 30 million copies worldwide across all platforms.
That's insane.
But what were the specific problems at launch? It was all because it had this always online requirement.
Yeah, a lot of people were like, I never had to play, Diablo 1 online or Diablo 2. But I mean,
that's because
it was them restructuring Battle.net and how Battle.net works, and it was kind of the larger picture. They wanted to incorporate Diablo 3 into that. So there was a little backlash. But when you think about it, I mean, most people were playing that online anyway, and this is 2015 is a different age. And even back then in 2012, people were more online than ever were.
Yeah.
So it was a smaller gap, I think, and then people kind of got over it after a while. There were some problems with the loot of not being the best it could be, and some other technical issues where they were really like the auction house. Like,
I was gonna say, do you even remember it launched with the auction house, the real money auction house?
Yeah, it had maybe a good premise, and then they're like, hey, how about real money? And I'm like, God, no.
Yeah. And then they like a year later, they just retconned it and pulled it out, right?
Yeah.
And that was fine with me because it showed they were learning. And we got to go back to Tristram.
And and Blizzard's very pro-consumer, which you see with stuff like Hearthstone, which is free to play.
Prosumer.
Prosumer.
Ooh, I like
Also,
that.
do you want a cool fun fact? Diablo is Spanish for devil.
That is a fun fact.
That changes everything.
That is true. I played Diablo 3 on PS4, and
Yeah,
that
same.
package that was released on console is
Amazing.
just
Best
so
Blizzard port since StarCraft 64.
That's
Good. Was
where
StarCraft 64 good?
No, it's real bad. That's where I played StarCraft for the first time.
Yeah, and you're like, why do people
sorry.
like this game? It's garbage.
But it's got Rumble.
One more video game that we need to touch on from 2012, something people might have forgotten about, but that was a big phenomenon at the time for about 5 minutes, was Draw Something.
I drew for more than 5 minutes, I'll tell you
Remember
that.
this thing? Draw Something.
Yeah.
Mobile game, Pictionary,
Yeah.
version that you would play with your friends. But the reason why it caught on so well is it was tied to your Facebook account.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you could see what Facebook friends were online, and then you would challenge them to the game, and then I would get the word mermaid, and Marty and I are playing, and I have to draw the mermaid, and Marty would have to guess what I'm drawing.
Yeah, I was real
It's just
bad.
a really simple
I was real
concept.
It was one of those things where everyone was doing it
Everyone
very
was
briefly.
playing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
same with like words with friends. It was
Yeah.
that. I feel like only
It was
only mobile
that year's
games.
Flappy Bird.
Was that,
Yeah.
We talked about Flappy Bird in another episode, which may have not aired yet because of the feature. Yeah, remember Flappy Bird?
It was definitely.
Yeah, we're not talking about Flappy Bird. Right?
Don't go down
Draw
that well.
Something. In the first 5 weeks after launching, the game was downloaded 20 million times. 50 days after its release, it had been downloaded 50 million times.
Suck it, Diablo 3.
It's crazy.
I think it's definitely because of that aspect where you could have like 20 games going with people
Oh, yeah.
on
Yeah.
Facebook.
Yeah,
And you just
that's part
go,
of it, too.
okay, who responded to me now? Okay, draw to draw, put it back in my
Yeah, it's
pocket.
the-
Also because of the drawing aspect of it, people would share their drawings. Like screen cap, share it on Twitter. Share it
Some
on
of them would
other
be like really
places.
good, and the other ones
Yeah.
would be like, you're terrible at
Yeah,
I
drawing.
could draw a good
Mine are
stick
pretty
figure.
good.
Yeah.
I have
Main
friends
stick
who are
figure.
really good artists who would just, they just like the opportunity it was giving them to draw.
Yeah,
the
totally.
fly.
And it was really smart by having it be asynchronous, to where it's like, hey, I'm checking my phone 4 hours from now, and then I can make a turn in these 4 games. And the fact that everyone had this in their pocket, that it was free to download.
Yeah.
Was it free to download? I might have made that up.
It was free to download.
Yeah, I didn't make that up.
Yeah. OMG Pop was a developer. They got bought by Zynga for $180 million.
Worth it.
Yeah.
God, why can't? What are we
mean,
doing with our lives?
I know. There was a Draw
I'll buy
Something
you
We're
too.
sitting here
$2
talking about it.
There was a draw something too.
It came out the following year, but no one
Drew.
Nobody
They
did.
had
didn't
like
draw
buy
an audience.
colors
That's
for
good.
$.
That's good. No, I was reading a New York Times article with the developers, and when they got bought by Zynga, one of the main guys was like, "Yeah, I had $1,000 in my bank account yesterday. Now I have much more."
Oh my God.
Okay, we're going to make one. Write something. Let's do it right now.
Write something.
Yeah, we'll be millionaires.
Wasn't that Words with Friends?
Yeah, probably good. Moving over to the movie side of 2012, the original Hunger Games film was released.
She's there. She's behind us.
Katniss.
That is Katniss.
played by Jennifer Lawrence. J-Law is that's what I like to call her.
Those of us in the biz.
I prefer pita bread.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, Peter Pan.
And then that series just wrapped up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just this last month, right?
Yeah, I mean that was one of the. I mean, Eric, you can speak to this more fully, but this is like since Harry Potter and then Twilight, like a lot of books have tried to get on that wagon and hit that audience, and Hunger Games is one of the few series that managed to successfully do it.
Yeah, I mean, Twilight, because as huge as Harry Potter was, it was already kind of such a big book series. I think everyone kind of knew it'd be a blockbuster. But when Twilight hit, it made Hollywood go crazy trying to make all these young adult novels. But yeah, Hunger Games is one of the only ones that was a true blockbuster and also critically well received. Actually, I reviewed that movie for us. I went back and reread my review. And one thing I would sort of still stick by is that I know the first movie gets a lot of flack for the shaky cam, and I do think it goes too far.
Yeah.
But tonally, I think that movie did a great job because there were still people who didn't really know the books who might think, oh, it's going to be really glossy and a love triangle. There's a love triangle, but it's not what the story's about.
Yeah.
And I think that first movie really established this is sort of a grim, gritty world, what the stakes were, and I think felt heavier than maybe some people expected going in.
Mm-hmm.
And then, yeah, Jennifer Lawrence, she was already rising star.
She had
but
already done X-Men.
the year before.
Yeah,
yeah.
she already won her Oscar.
Yeah, but this was like.
for Winter's
Winter's
Bone.
Bone.
Yeah, but I think this came out right before Silver Linings Playbook too.
Yeah.
So it was
Yeah.
just this moment, and obviously she was so great as Katniss, who was a very important character to people who were fans of the book, and yeah, it just worked. I mean, it wasn't a perfect movie, but I think it really did sort of it silenced some people who thought it was going to be like just sort of a silly movie when they saw the way that they were approaching it.
Definitely, in the set and costume design alone, like the contrast from when you first watch the opening part,
Yeah.
you just see how disheveled and like dystopic everything is, and then you see the capital, and you're just like, what's going on here?
Right, right.
They did a really good job of portraying that.
Yeah, and I mean, this was also along with X-Men, but obviously Jennifer Lawrence had a bigger role in this. Was she proved that she can hold up tentpole summer releases,
Yep.
or summer or fall releases, and then also be in David O. Russell films and be nominated for Academy Awards. So that's rare. I think nowadays, rare that someone can so easily straddle both lines.
And I think another cool thing about Hunger Games that's sort of undervalued sometimes is the whole way it depicts, the media and selling an image. And even within the first movie, the fact, especially because cynics were like, oh, isn't that the one with the love triangle? The fact that it's a plot point that Haymitch is like, I want you guys to play up to the camera that you're in love with each other because we're going to sell the audience on that. And there's kind of a funny, very meta thing happening there with the idea of manipulation and how you can use one thing to sort of gloss over something else.
Yeah, it's funnier to see the Hunger Games movie portraying like the dangers of consumerism and all that when you go to Subway and you get Katniss on
And you should read another article in IGN about weird marketing for the Hunger Games like that we just recently ran.
Crushed it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's one of those, like, a lot of people were like, oh, this is derivative of Battle Royale. And it's like, well, everything's sort of derivative of everything else. But like you said, it brings really interesting ideas about media and about celebrity, the idea of celebrity to the table.
And Battle Royale, I mean, I understand why it was like a touchstone for a lot of people, especially IGN readers. But yeah, like Battle Royale did not invent that idea, you know?
Killing people is not a new idea.
Yeah. And the killing people sort of has a show is not a new idea either. There's been a lot of interpretations of it because it's a pretty compelling idea.
Yeah. I love the site Box Office Mojo. That's a source of all sorts of interesting movie info. The Hunger Games is the #1 movie in a specific genre of all time. Can anyone guess what this genre
Romantic horror comedy.
Reality television. If you consider that to be a movie genre, Hunger Games is #1.
Over, like,
because it portrays a reality TV show.
Would, like, found footage movies be under
that one Jim Carrey movie?
The Truman Show?
Yeah, it did
No.
I do know Hunger Games, I don't know if it still has this record because records are broken so quickly now, but I do know at the time it had like the biggest midnight opening for a non-sequel, which again spoke to, the books were popular, but by the time the movie opened, it was reaching beyond the books. That there was just a lot of excitement about this series.
And a lot of the side characters, supporting characters, like Woody Harrelson's awesome, and Stanley Tucci's awesome, Elizabeth Banks is awesome.
Lenny Kravitz is
Lenny Kravitz!
He
passed away in the movie.
This is how
I was like, you are misinformed, sir.
Well, the #1 movie.
He just accidentally showed his penis. That's a totally different thing.
The opposite of passing away.
That's right.
The #1 movie of 2012 was The Avengers. I don't know if you've heard of it.
I've heard about it. Yeah, Earth's Mightiest
Marvel
Heroes.
had the cool guys.
Avengers.
Yeah.
Eric, we've talked about a lot of Marvel today.
We have. But here's the thing about Avengers. I mean, if you were to talk to Eric Goldman circa 2000 and say, there's going to be an Avengers movie, and Joss Whedon's going to make it. It seemed impossible, just that combination. The fact that this movie existed at all, and that we were actually getting this superhero team up was incredible. The fact that Whedon, who was such a cult favorite, but had never done anything that was like a huge mainstream hit. Amazing that all came together. And, as we talked about in other episodes, it's, just this payoff to what Marvel had been doing for a few years now, which was all such a gamble.
That was a long con.
That was a long con that could have gone bad.
We'd put in, 10 hours into Phase 1 already, and the origins of Iron Man and Thor and Captain America, and it's
Hulk.
And Hulk.
That's the thing. They weren't all good.
Yeah.
Like,
No.
Iron Man was good.
Yeah, but they did. I mean, the thing that we keep talking about is that they nailed the casting.
Yeah.
Like whether or not the quality of the movie was up there, like these I can't imagine anyone else playing these characters. And then having them finally, like, the last question was like, well, what is it going to be like when they're in the same room as each other?
It's going to be awesome.
Those scenes are phenomenal. Like the scenes I remember in the Avengers, it's like, the Battle of New York's cool, and Hulk smashing Loki back and forth is cool, but like I just think of the banter.
Yeah, just when them eating shawarma, just like, this is the coolest thing ever.
Yeah.
That's why Whedon was perfect for it, because he's a guy who gets the whole, he's a huge comic fan, he gets the characters, but he also takes a little bit of a different direction than other people do, and gets into like who they are as people, and so that you like just watching Bruce and Tony have a scene together, and they don't have to have the armor or the green skin, because you like these characters. That's like a big key, I think, to the MCU in general, is the casting, but also that you like to spend time with these people, and that movie really nailed that.
Yeah, it was the highest grossing movie of the year, still the highest grossing superhero movie ever, and the 4th highest grossing movie of all time.
I bet by the time this episode airs, like something else.
Well,
Star Wars.
Yeah, that's actually true.
And the road trip.
And the rest.
Switching over to DC, over on TV, Arrow began airing in 2012.
And it's interesting, because we're still in this weird place of DC kind of trying to make their movies happen. They've got 3 coming up, so there's a lot that they're gambling on right now. 3 as far as filming, there's way more planned. But Arrow was, kind of when you look back now, the fact that we're about to get the 3rd show in this universe, it's pretty impressive. And when Arrow began, it was definitely cribbing from the Dark Knight movies, I think to a fault when it began. But then it started to find its groove as that first season went on and became cooler and cooler, I think. And by the end of the first season, it's like, okay, they know what they're doing here.
And like the CW sort of had a negative connotation with it, I think, before this. And it was like, oh, they're doing this on the CW, like that seems weird. And then it comes out and you're like, oh, like this is really good. This is actually pretty dark and well done. And like the fight choreography is awesome.
Choreography is really good.
Yeah.
The flashback scenes were like probably my favorite scenes.
Oh, the stuff on the island,
And just even like the fact that the pilot established like the Deathstroke mask. Like they were very quickly setting up stuff that if you were a fan of the comics, like, ooh, I wonder where they're going with that, and they would usually pay it off. So there was like a lot of things there that I think would grab people as they went on.
Yeah.
And it's always interesting to me when they take. I don't want to say B tier because I feel like that's negative, but like a hero that's not as well known as Batman or Wolverine, and it's like, well, are people going to care about this guy? And then they just handle it really well. Like that's, like we were talking about in other episodes, something like Guardians of the Galaxy. It's like none of us really knew what that was, and then it comes out and you're like, oh, this is awesome actually. It's handled well.
But it really is funny when you look back when Arrow began because it was so feeling like the Nolan Batman movies, down to the fact that there seemed to be no superpowers in this world. And then they kind of, I think once they felt comfortable and they knew the audience was comfortable with it, it's like, okay, now the Flash has a spinoff, but also he's regularly dealing with like mystical stuff and powers all around him. And you saw the show get bigger and bigger, and now there's a lot of people running around in masks, and it's really fun to see.
Yeah.
There's a lot of anthropomorphic villains running around too on that show. I think season 1 of Arrow is really good. I think season 2 is awesome.
Season 2 is that's their best year so far.
Also, finally in 2012, the Saga comic series began.
Yeah, huge.
That is an incredible comic book.
Yeah, that's one of the like what Brian K. Vaughan was able to do. I mean, he's able. He with Y the Last Man, like this guy. No one should be surprised that he made something awesome. But Saga is just so weird and smart with its world building. Like it's just like, hey, this is a completely foreign place. I'm gonna thrust you in. There's a dude with a TV on his head. There's a cool cat man. Just like have at it. And like in 5 issues, you're like, oh yeah, totally. Like I am 100% on board with this world.
Yeah, I love Vaughn too. Why the Last Man is one of my favorite comics, and it's funny because Saga. There's a lot of things people evoke that. Yeah, it's like it's a little bit Star Wars, a little bit Game of Thrones, a little bit Lord of the Rings, while not feeling like it's just copying those things. It's he's completely created this universe onto itself, and it's really interesting and kind of a skewed perspective from that type of story.
Yeah.
Yeah. He was inspired by he wanted to write about being a parent.
Interesting.
Because he was becoming a parent.
Yeah.
But then he thought if he wrapped it up in like a sci-fi Star Wars-ish universe, it would be easier.
Yeah.
Like that would be more exciting
Sure.
than just writing about parenting.
Yeah.
Then the original pitch that that Image Comics used is that it's Star Wars meets Game of Thrones.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that
He
totally
was
works.
apparently like building this universe in his head since he was a teenager, just like spending all this time creating these
incredible.
characters. Yeah.
The funny thing is, it's it's interesting because he has vowed to never let them adapt this as a movie or TV show because he really wants it to be a comic book. He's had successful and unsuccessful adaptations of stuff and been involved in things, but I think that's actually interesting in this day and age. And he's like, no, this is just a comic.
Yeah.
And hopefully, we get so many great adaptations now, but no one really knows if it's helping people actually read comics. But something like Brian K. Vaughan's Saga, I think, it's one of those things like Sandman, even going back to get some people who don't read comics to check them out, just because it's like everyone's talking about it.
Yeah.
As I read it, I wonder in my head, like, man, I don't see how this would be possible as a TV show because the budget would be too big, and I don't see how they could spend this much on like a hard R big movie. And then I read that like he implicitly doesn't want anyone to make a movie or a TV show of it. Like that's why he wrote it that way.
Which I like. Like I think that's cool. Like as much as like we were talking about stuff like Walking Dead and Game of Thrones that have sort of expanded to all mediums. Like I'm totally fine with a thing being a thing.
Yeah.
Like you can exist in one column. You don't have to be in everything.
Yeah. I'll leave you with this quote from Brian K. Vaughan, talking about Star Wars and Saga. He says, "I'm part of the generation that all we do is complain about the prequels and how they let us down. And if every one of us who complain about how the prequels didn't live up to our expectations just would make our own sci-fi fantasy, then it would be a much better use of our time."
See, he's kind of thrown down the gauntlet when we were asking, what are we doing with our lives,
I'm still building the world, okay? Give me 4 years.
World building.
I like the idea that you're just at a bar by yourself. You're like, world building.
I'm building an awesome world right now.
There you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Just a few things that made 2012 awesome. I would say this seems like a really good year, but they all seem really good when you just pare it down to like just the cool stuff.
Oh,
Yeah.
well, when we get back to History of Awful in,
History of Awful.
in,
It's gonna be
20, in
amazing.
2016.
Sign me up for that.
Yeah.
That's gonna be our next. Whoa, that's gonna be really fun.
Yeah.
Now I really want to do that.
We're going to talk about Walking Dead Survival Instinct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or about 2012.
Yeah, I bought 2012.
The movie, not the
Yeah,
year.
that's true. All right, thank you, Marty. Thank you, Brendan. Thank you, Eric. My name is Damon. Thank you for joining us for another History of Awesome. Stay tuned. We still have a few more years to come. Which year will be next? Who knows? Stay tuned.